Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drop Stitches Podcast, episode 10. Super exciting. I'm recording a little bit earlier than I have before because I have something exciting to tell you. Before we get into that, why don't we go on our normal format? So I don't want to break anybody's stride or anything. That would not be cool. So I'm going to tell you what I'm drinking. And it's oh man, it's half empty already. In my obligatory Goodwill crystal. I quite wonder what company made this, because it looks, reasonably nice for Goodwill. I'll drink to that. So this is an Argentinian Chardonnay, Alamos. I'm quite pleased with it. And the reason I say I'm quite pleased with it, as if that's a shock, is because I got it at the grocery store. They do that in New Hampshire. You can buy wine in the grocery store. That's weird to me because I come from Maryland, but they don't do that. Anyway, so the label says exhibits flavors of ripe apple and stone fruit. Stone fruit being, if you don't know, like peaches and so on. And I don't get that at all. I could see apple a bit if maybe you were referring to a tart apple, because it does have a little bit of a bite to it. And I also get kind of flavors more like a black pepper, but that means I like it because I love black pepper. I love a little bit of kick. And I mean real black pepper, not that stuff that sits all ground up in a container until it loses all its life. Yeah, let's see. I'm still not getting peach. You can see I've tried many times. Well, it doesn't say peach specifically, okay, let's be fair, but I don't get anything else that is related. Like, I don't get plum or anything else. No. Maybe it's different if it's warm or if it ages a little bit, or maybe it's just this vintage. I don't know. This is a Chardonnay with a bit of a body to it. Some Chardonnays are kind of mild or worse. They could taste like toothpicks. That's always, down the drain. Can't drink that. But this is not like that. This is a Chardonnay that this would be great with cheeses and things like that, because it does have a bit of flavor of its own. I kind of think that it comes from some fruit that's very concentrated. Like maybe the vines were judiciously pruned, or maybe it comes from Argentina, so it could be from areas where it's a bit drier, and so the crop will be more concentrated, because it does have that flavor. But then again, it could be just, quality production. That could happen too. Yeah, I'm quite pleased. Okay, let's get on to the exciting announcement bits. Okay, so you remember last time I told you guys that I was going to be doing a test knit for Lara. I was just waiting for the yarn to arrive. Well, the yarn arrived today, which is why I'm recording right now. So this is breaking news, guys, breaking news. I wanted to tell you about it because, okay, sorry, mild interruption, guys. Right, so one of you lucky viewers is going to win a copy of this pattern when it comes out. So let's have a look at it. It is Windsong by Lara Smoot Designs. Sorry, getting used to the whole camera mirror thing going on here. Now you can see that it's a lace, maybe you can't see. Why don't you pretend with me that you can? It's a lace body with the contrasting color lace border. You could, of course, you could knit it in the same color. You'll want 2 skeins for that. She did this using Marigold Gen yarns. And what I have is also Marigold Gen yarns. There's 1 skein. Isn't it awesome? This is in her sparkle base. This reads gold in person, but you can see there's quite a lot of color going here. So it's kind of a wild color. I'll be using this as the body. And just like Laura's sample, I'll be using a darker color. And in this case, a tonal as the border, and this is the same base. So I just received these from Marigold Gen today. If you go to Maryland Sheep and Wool, you will see this in her booth. I think in past years she shared a booth with her daughter, who is hobbledehoy. And I didn't actually ask her, but I'm assuming that it'll be the same this year. So look in the hobbledehoy booth for Marigold Gen yarns, and look for the sample that I knit. And I'd love to see some Instagram pictures of you guys, standing next to the shawl saying hi at Maryland Sheep and Wool. As an aside, I will be going to Maryland Sheep and Wool with my sister Impact Reds. Say hello to us if you see us. And Laura Smoot, the designer, will also be around. And I'm sure she'd love to say hi to you as well. We're all mildly introverted, so if we're slightly awkward, don't be offended. Anyway, so Marigold Gen, if you've never worked with her yarn before, she does have some awesome colors. I highly recommend checking it out, and she's wonderful too. She's a sweet lady, and so she's going to be selling both on her Etsy shop and at Maryland Sheep and Wool kits for this shawl. So if you're interested in making it, you might look for those as well. How wonderful is that? The semi-solid is kind of a forest green in person, by the way. Now let's get some sparkle action. Sparkle. Anyway, yeah, so she's going to have kits, and we're going to give away a copy of the pattern. And so what I'm going to ask you guys to do is go to the Ravelry group, Dropped Stitches Podcast, in Ravelry, and I'll post a link to that underneath if you're watching on YouTube, so there'll be a link there for you to click to the group. So in that group, I want you, or in the thread for the contest, how about we do tell me your favorite Laura Smoot design. And I'll post in that thread, I'll post a link to her designer page so you can see all the different designs. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to tell you about my test knit? The objective is for it to be released at the beginning of April. So that's why I wanted to tell you this now, because I'm not sure if I'm going to record again before then. How about we just say that the contest will run. How about we just say that I will record again before then to help remind you to enter. And hopefully to get enough views on it so that some of you actually do enter. Anyway, moving on. How about we talk about a work in progress? So you remember my sweater from last week? Doesn't it look so much bigger? I actually have knit a lot on it. And the reason that you can't tell is because what I did was that I knitted all the way up to my armpit, and then I tried it on and I said, I hate this. And so I ripped it all out. And I hated it because even though it fit, it didn't fit to my liking. Um, it was just, it was not ideal. And so I ripped it all out and I cast it back on with additional stitches, and I haven't tried it on yet. So with any luck, I won't try this on and decide it's too big. Because I don't, at that point, I'm just gonna say, okay, we're just gonna roll with it because I'm not ripping it out for a third time. So true confessions. To be fair, I never ever, not one time, have I knitted a sweater that hasn't involved ripping it out at least once or twice. Maybe not necessarily the whole thing, but it's several inches worth, in order to change some shaping or change some patterning or whatever. I don't really do the whole math foo thing. It's not that I can't, I just don't. So, and I don't swatch properly. Crafter confessions, hashtag. So I kind of fake it and I do the back of the napkin calculation and I just start knitting and I see how it turns out. Although I might do less ripping out if I really paid more attention to doing the calculations, I don't know. To me, a lot of things sound good on paper. You don't really know until you start actually seeing it in person. Maybe if I kept better notes about fiber content, sizing, etc., I could figure out how to do it perfectly every time. But again, Craftwork Confessions, mildly lazy. Anyway, so I cast it back on with additional stitches, and in addition to that, I did make the ribbing deeper. The patterning on the body is still the same, but the ribbing is also a different type. So I had 1x1 ribbing before, and I can't remember what this style of ribbing it's called. But basically, if you can see it well enough, what you're looking at is a knit stitch with a garter rib, purl stitch, garter rib, and then knit stitch, repeat, blah blah. So this behaves differently with having the garter ridge in between the knit and the purl. Instead of it collapsing down the way that a knit purl would do, or at least as much, it still will pull in a little bit, but not as much because the garter rib kind of interrupts that. This is not quite what you would call an interrupted rib. I don't think, at least not what I've called an interrupted rib, but it has a similar function in that it gives more structure and it gives some wonderful texture, but it still holds that ribbing out a little bit more. So it doesn't collapse in real tight. So it just gives you kind of a different shaping. And I've always liked that pattern, but for some reason I've never actually used that stitch pattern on a sweater before. So it's time. And it is done. Well, no. It will be done. Let's think positively. I'll drink to that. Cheers. Okay. So, let's talk about the scarf that I'm wearing. This is not a new FO. Sorry. It's not. But since we haven't been talking in like, a couple of years, You haven't seen it unless you have seen it on my Ravelry page. So what you're looking at here is some hand-spun singles woven on a rigid heddle loom. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because, number one, I'm quite proud of it. And number two, not everybody knows that you can pull that off, right? That you can weave with hand spun, or that you can weave with hand spun singles. And you totally can. So this is some classy squid, as I recall. And I'll put it in the show notes just in case I'm being a twit. So it's some classy squid rollags, and the colorway is called Exploding TARDIS. Probably if you search Etsy for Exploding TARDIS, you will find this, because it's a regular colorway that she offers, I think. She's local to me, by the way, Massachusetts. Anyway, so some classy squid going on here, and this is so I can't remember what size heddle I used. It's probably a 10 or a 12 dent. But in my opinion, anyway, and of course everybody has opinion, what you want to be trying to do if you're going to do singles is to give them a bit of space, right? Because when you're weaving it, you have it under tension. It's I'm stretching it quite a bit here, and it looks kind of like that. And then after you wash it, the twist is going to activate and it's going to collapse. And so what that gives you is some wonderful texture. And of course you can get some cool color effects by using some basically by not plying it and just seeing what the color effects come out in the spinning. And then the collapsing of the singles, not only does it give you that texture, it brings the fiber in. So you want to be aware of that when you warp. That if you want a scarf that's, let's see, how wide is this? This is about 7 inches wide. You're gonna have to start with it being wider because it's gonna shrink. And sorry, not shrink, draw in. That's a better term. And same deal. It's probably gonna draw in length a bit too. So be aware of that. That you're going to be a little bit generous with the sizing when you warp for this. I did direct warp. I almost always direct warp on my rigid heddle because doing anything else brings out my lazy genes. Oh, and the other thing is, since it's singles and you're talking about live twist, you do not have to twist your fringe. There's a time saver for you, right? Just pull it off, knot it, and let the water and the active twist do the work for you. Score. Yeah, so I'm totally pleased with this. I might have finished it like a year ago. I don't remember exactly, but it's been a little while. And I still love it. Anyway, so if you haven't done that before, give it a try. Also, I did not size these singles. Sizing is when you coat your singles with by dipping them in a gelatin solution or a cornstarch or something like that, and then letting it dry under weights so that it doesn't collapse. All I did was leave it sit on the bobbins for a little while so the twist would naturally kind of get fixed, and then after it washed, of course, it just reactivated and I didn't have to worry about washing some kind of goo out of it. Maybe if you have certain kinds of fibers or whatever, maybe the sizing really does make a difference, or maybe it depends on your loom or whatever. So I'm not saying don't try it, I'm just saying you don't necessarily have to do it. And weighs about 3 ounces, I'm guessing. I had 4 ounces of fiber, but I didn't use it all for this. The rest of it ended up getting applied into a skein. Anyway, what's next? All right, let's do some art next. So in my last podcast, I rambled shamefully about a piece I had called Tooled Fish and how much and some other things. But as part of this, I had talked about tool fish. And I'm sorry if none of that actually made any sense to anybody but me. Whatever. But so as apology, I'm going to show you tool fish. Aren't they awesome? Check out the taxidermist eyes. Totally creepy. Woo. It's quite heavy. Like I said, it's on a board. And, you know, there's metal attached to it. And there's the artist's name. Sorry about that. There we go. And I've had this for quite a while, maybe 10 or 15 years, something like that. But I would like to, part of me, not part of me, all of me, wants to try to find this artist again and see if he's still making, because Toolfish is just so very awesome and creative. How cool is that? All right. Now, the last thing we have to talk about, lighting is not great. The last thing we have to talk about is a pretty. Different kind of pretty. This is a Miltonia or Miltonopsis orchid, and I say it that way because I don't actually have a tag for this, so I can't be sure. Probably a Miltonopsis, and I think that's the common one. I'm not real well versed in these guys. I have a couple of them, but largely I'm experimental with them, to be quite honest. But let's, can you see that well? Yeah. These often have large flowers, you know, maybe 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches. And as you can see, you know, a plant can have quite a few on it. And they're sometimes fragrant. This one is fragrant. It smells kind of like roses, I guess. It's very mild, especially at this time of day. It's you can see my lighting's kind of crappy. That's because it's getting on to dusk. Anyway, these have been popping up a lot more frequently in grocery stores and the like, garden centers and things, which makes them more accessible to a lot of people. I wouldn't say, well, in my opinion, they're not the easiest thing ever, but they're not terrible. And if you've grown a Phalaenopsis before and you've done well with it, this might be a good thing to try next. Let's see. Now, they do look a bit different than a Phalaenopsis. You can see they have a fleshy pseudobulb, just like the Cattleya we talked about last time. And they have a soft, kind of grassy leaf. But they do tend to like conditions and treatment fairly similar to a Phalaenopsis. They might want to be a little bit cooler at night, but I wouldn't fuss about that too terribly much. You'd be surprised how much temperature changes on a windowsill, especially at night, because that sun coming in during the day is going to heat it up, and it's going to be warm and happy in the sun. And then when the sun goes down, the window's a little bit drafty. It's going to cool down a lot more and a lot faster than your house. So, you know, it's not a terribly significant thing. They're fairly tall plants. But again, like a phalaenopsis, they don't need terribly strong light. They need a little bit of sun, but they want that gentle sun. So that usually makes them easier to accommodate in some way in your house. The other thing about them is they have a stronger preference, I guess would be a good way to say it, for good humidity. Uh, and so what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you should spritz your plant. I'm not a big proponent of that because I think that tends to lead to rot. Um, so, but having said that, I have seen some people who grew a lot of these things and did that and had great success with it. I'm just saying I don't do it. I think that if you're concerned about humidity, the better way to go is to do a pebble tray, where you have some either aquarium gravel or some other small rocks, pea gravel, whatever, and you have maybe an inch of it, and then you keep water in that tray about half the depth of the pebbles, and you sit a saucer of some kind and then stick your plant on top, and then the evaporation coming up is going to provide some additional humidity to your plants. That can be very effective. It's very easy to set up. You can use any container for that. And it tends to be a safe way to add a little bit of humidity. What else? So again, like a phalaenopsis, with similar watering and similar needs in terms of light. One thing to watch out for, though, if you look at one of these and you decide to buy one and try it in the grocery store, is that what I've noticed is that they tend to sell them in something that looks like dirt, which I'm not a fan of. I'm not saying it can't be done, and there's growers that grow plants in this, because there's a plant that has been grown in dirt. I can't tell if it's peat moss. It's probably peat moss. I just find it to be a risky proposition for most home growers. It's too easy to overwater in this stuff and then end up with a rotted plant. So what you want to do then is do exactly what I just did. Give the pot a little squeeze, pull the plant out, and have a look at those roots before you bring it home. Make sure they look firm and happy. And you see there's quite a lot in there. And then when you bring it home, just be careful that it's not staying sopping wet all the time. So that means having a look at it before you water it. And then after it's done blooming, just repot it. And in orchids, we haven't talked about what repotting means in orchids, but in orchids, mainly what repotting means is pull it out of the pot, knock off the old media, shove the roots into a pot, which might even be the same one, depending upon what the root mass is, and fill in with whatever media works for you. And orchid media is like opinions. Everybody has one. So there's a lot of variation there, but in general, the popular ones for guys like these would probably be something like a sphagnum or a fine bark kind of mix. And then, those kinds of things tend to be safer. Maybe at some other point, we'll talk about repotting, or alternatively, there's an article about the topic on my old blog, which was sapphirechild.blogspot.com. Let's see. Okay, I think that's all I had for today. I wanted to try to keep it really short so I didn't bring a lot of stuff around. And I think I've rambled enough. So, again, thanks for coming by. You can find this on YouTube as well as on the blog, which is Dropped Stitches Podcast. at blogspot.com, and also come by and enter into the pattern contest, which will be at the Drop Stitches podcast Ravelry group. And you can find me on Instagram now. If I didn't mention that, I started an Instagram account this week, and you can find me there as julia.redman, Redman. And I'd love to hear from you. Take care.